Yeah, and then we could just keep an eye on
If
him
he
coming in.
joins us, yeah.
Okay,
We're
great.
4, right? As long as we have 3.
That's right.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to, do you want me to do the electronic, do you have the electronic
Let me just share it here quick.
meeting criteria or whatever?
Yep, let me pull it up.
Tim, I have it if you can let me share my screen.
Oh, yes, sorry. Of
No,
course.
that's my
Thank
bad.
you. You should be good now, Amelia. Thank you.
All right, welcome to our meeting. This is the Historic Preservation Commission. All commissioners will be on video. Commissioners and staff will be asked to click raise hand when they wish to speak. The chair will also call on individuals to speak. Commissioners and staff are asked to keep their microphones muted until called upon. Members of the public will be muted during presentations and commissioner discussion. For public participation, the public may join the meeting from a computer or dial in by phone. All public members are muted upon entry. To make a comment during public comment segments by computer, click the raise hand icon. It is either in the participants panel on the right of your screen or in the control panel at the bottom of the Zoom screen. And you may have to hover over that area to see it. By phone, hit *9 to raise your hand. The chair will call on those with raised hands individually. You'll be unmuted when called upon. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Thanks for sharing that. And then we will do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap.
Present.
Commissioner Clemmy.
Here.
I'm going to wait for Commissioner Keller. Okay, Commissioner Keller, are you present? It was yes. Chair Haley.
Yes. Thank you. I was just in time, Keith. Right in time for roll call. All right. So looking at our agenda for this evening, does anyone have any changes or additions to make? And if not, we can make a motion to approve it.
I move to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So our agenda is approved. And then our meeting from November 15th, 2021, looking at those minutes, any changes or additions or omissions? And if not, we can move to approve.
I'd move to approve those minutes from November.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So our minutes are approved from last month. And then any public comments on items that are not on our agenda tonight? And I don't see any hands raised. All right, and our first item is a public hearing for a demolition request for 612 Jefferson Avenue, and we'll have a staff report.
Great. Thank you, Chair Haley. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. Get that all set up here. And I'm working with just one screen today, but everyone can see this okay? Good. All right. I'm used to a couple, so I didn't want to mess it up or anything. So it's good to see all of you. So as Chair Haley mentioned, our first item tonight is a demolition request and probable cause determination for 612 Jefferson Avenue. As you can see on the screen before you, the left-hand side of the screen gives you that approximate location. So you can see it's along Jefferson and then Pine Streets to the north. And then the overall area in which the property is located is within Old Town is on the right-hand side and indicated by the star. So for a little bit of context, these are two historic photos, both of which are Boulder County Assessor record photos. The one on the right is from 1948, and the one on the left is newer, so a 1976 photo, just to give you a little bit of context of what it's looked like in the past. For what it looks like currently, here's a couple photos, so I'll go through them. On the kind of upper left-hand side of your screen, this is the rear of the property, so you can kind of barely see the house, the primary structure itself, kind of on the far left edge of the photo, but these are a couple of the accessory structures that are are located on the property and would be a part of the demolition request. In the center, kind of bottom of the slide, is the east or south elevation, and so kind of the front of the house. But this is what the primary structure would look like, and then the photo on the right would be just another angle of the front elevation of the house there, so the kind of north side as well as the front. So we'll be looking at two things this evening. So demolition review as well as a probable cause request. And so for the review criteria for the demolition review, you can see we look at a couple things listed there before you. The probable cause request will look at a couple of similar things, and we'll go through that sort of its eligibility for landmarking, the age, significance, and integrity in a moment, as well as the relationship of the building as a potential historic district. And then the other two for demolition review that we look at would be the reasonable condition of the building and the reasonable projected cost of restoration or repair. At the time of application, the applicant didn't have detailed information about the last two, but as you can see here tonight, they will also be requesting the probable cause. So they would go for the HSA to get some more of that information should you approve that request. And just to, before I move forward for number 2 in the review criteria, where it talks about its potential of a contributing structure, this property has been, as part of the Jefferson Place surveys, which took place a number of years ago. So those state forms, the state forms do have a kind of a section in them where whoever fills them out can indicate if they believe that the house or the property in which the report is on could be a contributing building to a historic district. And so as part of that review or that state form, it did indicate that the Jefferson Place survey could potentially be a historic district. And the report also indicated that this could be a potential contributing structure to the potential historic district. So just to kind of give you that information as well. So again, that information was noted in the state form that was done as part of that survey for this property. And if you have questions on that, I'm more than happy to answer that as well. But to move forward a little bit with those eligibility criteria components, which would be part of the demolition review and the probable cause hearing, we'd look at a couple things as we always do. So landmarks must be at least 50 years old. They should meet one or more of the criteria of either architecture, social, or geographic environmental significance, and then they should meet one or more of the physical integrity. So it certainly meets the 50 years old. The principal structure was constructed in 1900, so it's about 121 years old. So it does meet that criteria of age. It does meet social significance. So it has long associations with two families, in particular the Lecompte and Hicks families. And they were but they were members of our past. They were coal mining families, and a number of the, or one of the sons in the Lecompte heritage was fought in World War I in the French army. So a little bit of history that's a little bit different than we might see in other families there. And then the house is also associated with the historic development of Louisville and the Jefferson Place subdivision. So that does tie back to some of those things I was mentioning that were noted in the state form. So staff does believe that this meets the social significance. For physical integrity, staff does believe it meets that as well. The structure adds character and value to Old Town Louisville and represents a pattern of growth that is typical here in town. And then the structure remains in its original location and has not been moved. And the property, while it's seen a number of interior and exterior alterations, the overall form, the massing, the size has remained the same over the years. So this is just a slide to note about the preservation master plan, and that if you were to approve the probable cause for the historic structure assessment, it would meet a couple of those goals as outlined in the master plan. So goal 3 and goal 5 is listed there. And so with that, staff has a couple recommendations. So first, the HPC may release the permit or place a stay on the application. You are able to place a stay for up to 180 days from the time of application. The application for the demolition review came in on October 15th. So if you did vote for the full 180 days, that would be April 13th, 2022. But staff is recommending a 90-day stay, which would expire then on January 13th, 2022. The applicants have been in great contact with staff. We've talked about the number of options. And in fact, it was during the kind of process of getting it ready to come before you this evening that we talked about the HSA opportunity or option and what that could kind of open up for them. And so in that vein, staff is also recommending that the HPC do find that there's probable cause for landmarking for the subject property at 612 Jefferson Avenue, and that we would recommend approval for the historic structure assessment, and the current maximum amount available for residential HSA is $4,000. And so you may by motion approve or deny the finding of probable cause, and then the demolition stay as well. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen, and I'm here for any questions. We do also have Josh Johnston, who would be here as representing the applicant this evening as well.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I guess I do. So, I'm feeling like this is the first time I've seen a demo request with a probable cause at the same time. So I guess I'm a little thrown off. So it came in as a demo, and then you were able to communicate with the applicant, and then now maybe it's like, hey, we could do both kind of simultaneously. Is that-
Exactly. That's
okay.
right. Yep. I think you've seen one or two, but you're right. It's not that common. Typically, it's just one or the other. But
Yeah.
yes, so you would be voting on both tonight, both requests.
Okay.
But that's right. Yes. So you would be voting on the stay length, and then if you felt like it still had the eligibility to meet the probable cause, and then it would open them up to be able to get the grant money for the HSA as well.
Okay, so it's more voting on the stay length, not whether there's a stay at all.
Correct. Yes, it would
Yeah,
be
okay.
how long of a stay you'd like, and staff is recommending the 90 days, but you
I
could
see,
go
okay.
all the way up to the 180. Yep,
Yeah, okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
of course.
That's a good question. Anyone else have any questions?
So I guess the 90-day stay is essentially a 30-day stay, right? Because of when the clock started running.
Mhm.
Is there any intent by well, maybe we have to wait to hear from the applicant.
Right, that's probably more of an
Okay.
applicant question. Yeah.
Yeah, I will leave it to the applicant, but I can say just in conversations I've had with the owners, and then of course the applicant folks at the DHA, on the DHA team, that they would be interested just in learning more about what kind of, what the house, what condition it's in, rather than, I believe they've gone inside and seen, but that's a little bit different, right, than doing a more examined look at maybe the structure, the foundation, those sorts of things. So from my understanding, the HSA would give them kind of that, the ability to do that in closer detail, and then that would give them more answers about which path they might like to or be able to kind of go down, from my understanding. But I would leave that more to the applicant.
Yeah.
And we can talk about the timeline too, Gary, like it's 90 or 180, and we could obviously probably do a different timeline too if that is necessary. So that's something we can figure out as we go also. All right, any other questions? All right, and the applicant's here. So if the applicant would like to talk to us, just state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, Josh Johnston, DHA Design, 922 Main Street. I would just like to add that when the demolition was requested, we had seen the house, but in a limited capacity, just due to the current state of affairs. And after having a second opportunity to actually go in the basement and view the entire house, we were able to present a clearer understanding to the owner what the HSA would entail, and that this house would be a good candidate for that. I'm also available to answer any other questions, and hopefully that answers some of them.
Chair Haley, you're muted.
So seeing the structural pieces in the basement didn't discourage you, basically, as the as far as design and everything. Is that kind of what you're saying? Like it wasn't as bad as
Correct.
you thought it was? Okay.
Yeah, so the first visit was, I mean, we couldn't really even get into the house. And so it was just kind of poking our head in and seeing the main floor.
Mhm.
But then actually going into the basement, it actually was in really good condition just on that kind of preliminary analysis without doing the full HSA analysis, yes.
Okay, that's good news. All right, and thank you for being able to communicate that to the homeowner too. That's really important as a architect. I think we appreciate that about DAJ, so that's really good. Any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for maybe the applicant, maybe staff. I feel like I was on the subcommittee when this one came across, and I was uncomfortable with it being a full demo and not going to the full commission. And at that time, they were saying that this property was in horrible shape. Am I on the wrong property?
Nope, this is the same one. Yes, so their initial take, just based on, I think as Josh kind of indicated, just
Okay,
kind of
on
the state it
first look.
was at that time, but when they were able to get in
Okay.
further and some of the interior was cleaned out in a way they could just see it better and go through it better.
Okay,
That gave
okay.
them the clear picture, and that's where,
okay,
you're right, and that's why it was initially kind of just the demolition. And
Right, okay.
now the HSA seems more like it could be a good option. And so you're right, this is
Good,
the same
okay.
property from the subcommittee. Yep.
Okay, yeah, all right. That was just my concern, because at one moment it was, yeah, I don't want to spend money on an HSA when
Mhm.
you're thinking this is a no-go structurally wise, but that's, like you said, very encouraging that at a second glance and digging deeper, that it would be worthy. And like Chair Haley said, we know DAJ design well, and they have a lot of expertise.
Mhm.
And would be the right people to be able to tell us that, yeah, this is worth looking deeper into. So that's all my questions.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess. It appeared to me that this property was marketed recently. I don't know, maybe these are irrelevant comments, but it seemed like it was marketed recently as a scrape to the buyer, who was a builder, with the intent of scraping it. And, we do want staff to try to alter those trajectories to look at the possibilities of the property. But if there's almost zero probability of doing anything besides demolishing it, we, like Andrea said, we don't really want to waste money on a analysis if it isn't going to help at all.
Mhm.
I don't know if that outside information is relevant to what we do.
Mhm. And I think that's a valid question. I mean, on one hand, what we say is that when we do the HSA, it's also documentation for the city and all that. Like it serves a
Yeah.
purpose for us. But if the applicant truly has like no intent to keep the structure, then is it worth it? I think that's a valid point. I guess the fact that DAJ Design is hopeful makes me, and just knowing some of their past projects and stuff makes me hopeful that
Mhm.
they would probably pursue that, but there's no guarantee either. So yeah.
Josh, would you
yeah.
like to comment on that, Josh? If there's any possibility of doing anything with the existing structure?
Yeah, there is a possibility of doing something with the existing structure. Obviously, I can't say that I know what's going on in our client's mind to the full extent, but they are very interested in keeping it if it is in their best interest. And just that with any HSA, there's always that chance that it could be demolished. But I do know that in past meetings that I've sat in on, just the stating the value of having that as a historical record for the city, if it goes that path.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, any other questions for the applicant before we ask for public comment? All right. So if anyone in the public would like to comment on anything, and I don't see anyone, so we'll bring it back for discussion with the commission. So it clearly, well, as far as the HSA probable cause, it definitely meets our criteria as far as the architectural integrity, the social history, and the 50 years or older. So, so that, I feel like that's pretty straightforward. And then the next piece would be the demolition piece, as far as putting, whether we approve the demolition or go ahead and put a stay on it. So.
So I agree with you, Chair Haley, the probable cause, we've met everything. I'm kind of concerned about the 90-day ending January 13th. That seems a little
abrupt.
that seems a little short. I mean, we've got, we're looking at 2 weeks of like holiday stuff happening. So yeah, then it makes you like, wait, are you really gonna, I mean, I guess if you don't do the probable cause, then we don't pay the bill for it and you take it down. But I guess I would be more comfortable with like maybe the end of January. Maybe another 14 days added to that. I don't know.
And that might be a question for the applicant too, just as far as, and Josh, you can pipe in if you have any insight, but does January 13th with the holidays and everything, is that enough time to actually have an HSA done, or should we do like February 1st or January 31st or something?
Yeah, I think February 1st probably seems a little more reasonable.
Okay.
For our company.
Okay. And we could even do like February 15th just to push it out even another month if that gives more time, or I think, just making sure that it's not rushed and all that kind of stuff is important for us, just to make sure it's a good timeline for you.
I think I would still say February 1st is an adequate timeline.
Okay, that's good. Does that sound good to everyone else on the commission? The February 1st instead of the January 13th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we do the motion, we'll just, I don't know how many days that is. I guess we can just say, instead of a so many days day, we'll just say a stay until February 1st, or expires February 1st.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And then, so does everyone agree to put a stay on it? Is everyone in, this isn't official, but just before are we good talking about that, or do we want to? Okay. So then as far as approving the probable cause, I think this is where we have a little more kind of back and forth, but approving the probable cause would allow them to have the HSA done. So does anyone have any objections to that or any discussion needed?
So we end up approving both the demolition and a probable cause. And
Well, we would approve a stay for the demolition. We wouldn't be approving the demolition. Is that what you mean?
well, isn't it technically a demolition with a stay on it?
Yeah, I mean, so as of February 1st, they could still demolish it
Mhm.
anytime after February 1st. Then we're allowing them to demolish it regardless of the results of the HSA. Or if the HSA is done and we pay the bill and they still tear it down. I mean, that's right. But I mean, that's always, we just usually know going in if someone does an HSA, usually when they request it, they are thinking that they want at least the information. And, you know, of course, we're always thinking if you've gone through that process that you're probably interested in preserving or keeping part of the house, I think. So that's why I was like, at the beginning, I was a little thrown off by this one because I don't know why you wouldn't just ask for the probable cause and not do the demolition right now. Right, like, but I think it sounds like they came in with the demolition request and DAJ had preliminary looked at it when I was on the subcommittee and was like, wow, this it's not worth, you have to tear it down. There's nothing we can do kind of thing. She's gone too far. But then on second glance, they did. And so I think that's why we kind of have this weird situation. And it does sound like perhaps the owner is interested and now they have more information and now their architect's saying, hey, we might be able to salvage this, and they sound like they might be interested. So I mean, I'm good approving the stay and the probable cause.
And I think this situation, this type of situation is exactly why we thought the probable cause with the HSA approval would be beneficial, because there have been plenty of homeowners that come in with the intent to demo, and then if we can offer like, hey, at least look at it like officially, then it just helps them make a more informed decision without being stuck. So so in some ways, like, this is exactly what it's for, is for the exploration and just a better educated decision. So, but it does seem, I agree, Andrea, that it does feel a little funny of like, we're, basically moving in the direction of demolition at the same time we're kind of exploring possibly landmarking. So it is a weird place, but I think that's exactly where we hope we can have more people, is in that, like, being able to make a better decision. So anyway.
Right.
And I feel like, and Kim, you can correct me, I feel like we have had some before where we do approve the HSA, even though they might be, I feel like there might have been something in the past that's similar to this. Not super common, but not.
There is one, the one that immediately comes to mind, I think it was roughly a year ago, would have been 832 Parkview. And so that was a similar situation. I wasn't here then, so I can't speak to it, but I do remember in particular that was an instance of a demolition review at the same time and the same hearing as the probable cause as well.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
I'd be inclined to think we take the applicant in good faith that they do want to entertain the possibility of saving the structure and incorporating it. So I'd be in favor of improving both resolutions.
Yeah, it's a great structure. I think the actual integrity is, like, it's a great home. So I'm glad that they were able to kind of see some of the possibility for it before it got too far down the line. So is anyone ready to make a motion for us? And we'll do it separately. So we'll do this, probably this day first, and then the probable cause, I guess. I guess it doesn't really matter.
So do we want this day to expire on January 31st? Is that our goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think we said February 1st, but
Okay.
yeah, we can
I
just,
think,
I don't know.
I just think at the end of the month, then starting February 1st, you can do whatever you want with.
That's
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
All right. So I move to approve the demolition request for 612 Jefferson Avenue with a demolition stay that would expire January 31st, 2022.
I would second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. And so Josh, obviously, I know you kind of know the drill, but Kim will be in touch with all the details. And then if your client does decide, obviously we have the grant program and all kinds of benefits. So hopefully this will go in the direction of towards landmarking. But regardless, we're glad that we're doing the HSA. So thank you for being here tonight.
Agreed. Thank you.
So we need to approve that still, though, huh, Chair Haley? The probable cause?
Oh, I thought you put that in there.
Oh, I didn't. I thought
No.
we were doing them one at a
No,
time.
they were separate.
Oh, I'm sorry. For some reason, when I listened, I was like, oh, she just combined them. I guess I did.
Oh,
Sorry.
no.
Okay. I didn't listen. Okay.
It's okay.
Let's do the
We
poll.
usually do them separate just so it's
I'm
like,
sorry. Yeah, no,
Really
I
good.
thought so. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, she combined them. That's good. I don't know what I was listening to. Okay. So we just need one for the probable cause. Sorry, I got ahead of myself.
that's fine. I'll do that one too. So I move to approve the probable cause determination for 612 Jefferson Avenue.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll do another roll call, please.
Still muted, sorry. Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes, I think we have to take the owner at their word. Hopefully they change their mind.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right, so now it's official. So, all right. So our next item is a landmark request for 301 Spruce Street. And we'll have another staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Haley. I'll share my screen again. So the second item on our agenda this evening is for Resolution 12, Series 2021, which will be a request to landmark the property at 301 Spruce Street. You probably recognize this as it did recently come before you as a probable cause request to receive HSA funding. But just as a refresher, here we are at the corner of Spruce and McKinley, right there on the northeast corner, outlined there with the yellow dashed line. To give you a broader context of where the property is located within the Old Town overlay, it's on the right-hand side of your screen, marked as the star on the Old Town overlay map. So again, the historic conditions, these are two photos from a 1985 state inventory form report. So the left would show you kind of the south and east elevations on the left, and then the right-hand side would be a photo of kind of the rear side of the house. These two photos will be current conditions. So this is what the property looks like currently. Some similar views of the house just to give you a sense of what it looks like on that south elevation of the front side. And then here on the right-hand side of the screen is a photo of the southeast elevation. As indicated in our last item, we'll look at the landmark criteria and its ability to meet it. So we look at if it's 50 years old, that landmarks must meet one or more of the criteria for architectural, social, or geographic environmental significance, and then landmarks should meet one or more criteria for physical integrity. So for the age requirement, the principal structure at 301 Spruce was constructed about 1908, making it approximately 113 years old. So it does meet the 50-year threshold. For architectural significance or the other criteria, staff does believe that the style and integrity of the structure meet the criteria for architectural significance. It's one of the larger homes that you know, as it stands, that Louisville would have seen in terms of its size and massing. So one of the few kind of full 2-story homes we have in town. The architectural style of the subject properties is not necessarily unique to Louisville, but it's certainly a style that was popular around the country at about that time. So the certain detailings, the porch detailings, as you see on there, would have been common of kind of that vernacular style. And then its mass and scale, as I mentioned, would have been much larger than kind of comparative worker bungalows. And it's still this is more of the social significance, but staff does feel that could have been as it was associated with miners through John Thompson, and he was a foreman for the Hecla mine, so there could be some ties there as well, and that bleeds into social history too. So for social significance, staff does find that the former residents were noteworthy in the community and that the property meets the criterion for social significance. So as I mentioned, it has some association with John Thompson of the Hecla mine, but it's also associated with Arthur Thompson, who served as a town trustee. And then there's some business history as well, with Charles Grasso once being a resident of the home, and he started the Track Inn and Henry's. So some other ties there as well. And then certainly, if you remember from the probable cause determination hearing, this property is located on the National Register of Historic Places. And in the state of Colorado, any property that's on the National Register is given automatic status on the Colorado State Register. So it's already kind of meets some significance just by virtue of having those state and national ties as well. And then lastly, for physical integrity, staff finds that the structure meets the physical integrity required for landmarking. So the house is in its original location, and it was also retains all 7 aspects of integrity. So location, setting, design, materials, workmanship, feeling, and association. Staff feels all remain in the property as well. So for the recommendations, the structure at 301 Spruce, as I noted, retains all aspects of integrity and has social significance. And so staff finds that the property is eligible to be landmarked and therefore eligible for a $5,000 landmark grant. And so staff is recommending approval of Resolution 12, Series 2021. And staff also recommends that the house be named for the Thompson family, just since they were the first and kind of longest residents associated with the property as well. And with that, I am here for any questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen. We do have the applicants here as well this evening. You can see them on your screen on the Zoom as Dennis Tenney, but they're both here tonight. And so they're here as well if you need them.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I'm impressed that there's all 7 of the architectural integrity.
I know.
Like everything's there. So good. All right. If the applicant, Dennis Tenney, if you would like to speak with us, just state your name and address for us. You're not obligated to, but if you'd like to, you're more than welcome.
There.
Oh. Okay. Actually, the property belongs to Susanna Peltz, my wife. So
Yeah, I
she'll talk.
inherited from my mother, Nancy Hamilton Peltz. And I adore the house.
And
And
address.
currently, we live at 556 Grant Avenue in Louisville, and we moved into it in 1985. So we've been here a while. Only thing I have to say about the house is during 2013, I went down in that basement to make sure it was dry as a bone down there. There was no moisture. And, you know, the roof got repaired in, I guess, with that big bad hailstorm we had. I think that was 2018. But there was no leaking up in the attic either. I went up there to make sure it was doing okay. And so the house is definitely adored. So,
And Just one comment. I'm delighted at the idea of naming it for the Thompson family.
Yes.
John Thompson, at great risk to himself, stood with the miners during the long strike,
Wow.
1914, and that's admirable to me.
And it's had its sewer line replaced last year because we knew when we purchased the property, and Mother was aware that the sewer line was one of those tar paper ones, one of the last ones. And it finally went last fall. So it's got a whole brand new system out to the street now.
That's great. Yeah, that's amazing. It's been in the family the whole time. That's really neat. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant? I feel like it's so straightforward. All we can say is like, thank you. So, yeah. All right.
Oh,
Well,
I do have a question. If you know anyone that works on chimneys, the chimney cap came off. And I tried to get the roofers to put it on when they were doing roofing. They said, we don't touch chimneys. And I hadn't researched that. So if you've got any ideas about these old chimneys, let me know.
okay. Yeah, staff might know better of someone possibly, but we can definitely.
I can send Kim,
It blew off in a windstorm and I've got the cap in the yard. It was a metal.
Kim,
one.
I can send you a name.
Okay, great.
Yeah, Keith lives downtown in a historic home, so.
Yeah, they replaced my whole chimney.
Yeah, okay,
So
great.
yeah, got a good guy.
Good.
Good.
Actually, in addition, Matt Berry, who also lives on Spruce, or it's at Spruce and Garfield, is having a brick mason scheduled for like March. They're backed up, so if you can wait that long,
Oh,
that
sure.
person will be in town then.
Well, I'm not sure the chimney's broken. It's just like the metal part blew off. It's on
Okay.
top. I think it's to keep the birds or water out of the
Yeah.
Right.
chimney.
Just a cover.
Yeah, it's a wrought iron cover that the wind picked up and.
Yep. So yeah, it sounds like Keith will get it to Kim, who will get it to you. So
Thank you.
yeah, of course. All right. Well, thank you for being here tonight. Does anyone have any more questions for them before we? All right. And we'll see if there's anyone in the public that has a comment, question. And I still see no public, so we'll bring it back for discussion with the commission. So this house is definitely 50 years or older, has very strong, probably the best architectural integrity, and then very strong social history as well. So it definitely meets our criteria. Do you want to have any other comments or questions or concerns to bring up?
No, I agree. I think it's a slam dunk.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's a house that's much treasured in the community, and
Mhm.
it'll be great to have it landmarked
Mhm.
locally.
Yeah, just because it provides even more protection than the national or state. So that's really good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think if someone would like to make a motion for this, I think we're probably good to go.
I would move that we approve the landmark designation for 301 Spruce.
I'll second.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. So, yeah, thank you so much for bringing your property to us and for just believing in our program and protecting the property. So it's very exciting. And Kim can go through all the benefits of having the landmark as far as the grant, if at any time you need access to a grant for any work on the house. And then also we have a landmarking ceremony, probably in the next, well, it'll be in 2022, that where we actually present you with the plaque and everything. So it's super special. So we're excited to have this property as on our list. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. All right. So our next item is another landmark request for 928 Lafarge Avenue, and we'll have another staff presentation.
All right, thank you, Chair Haley. So the next item up, as you just mentioned, would be 928 Lafarge. So you'd be reviewing a resolution, or pardon me, a request to landmark the property at 928 Lafarge, which would be Resolution 13, Series 2021. Just as some contextualizing information, giving you a kind of a scope of where it is, you can see it's here near the corner of Lafarge and South Street. You can see it on the left-hand side of your screen outlined there with the yellow dashed line. And then to give it just a broader idea of where it is in general Old Town, you can see it on the right-hand side of your screen within the map there with the star. For historic conditions, these are two photos from the 1950 Boulder County Assessor's card. So on the right-hand side, there would be the physical or the actual image of what it looked like at that time. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, to give you the ground plan sketch as it would have existed in 1950. As we get into it, you'll see there's been an addition to this property, which if you remember from the probable cause, that it's bigger. So I think this is just some nice context to see kind of some of the changes just generally over time as well. So for the current conditions, you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, a current photo. So you can see the front, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen there, the window remains the same, the porch remains the same, but you can see some of that rear addition there in the back of the property. And then the right-hand photos give you southwest and northwest elevation views for current photos as well. And so just as we've looked at for landmarking, we would look at a few things. Of course, its age, if it meets one or more of the criteria outlined there. So architectural, social, or geographic, environmental, and then of course, one or more of the physical integrity as well, which we'll get into now. So this photo on the right-hand side, I'll just stop and note as well. You can see, so this is even more recent. This property did come in recently for a subcommittee review to redo the siding, and the siding was approved at subcommittee and replaced as it reflected changes that were recommended in the HSA, and the siding that has now been installed was based on the historic photos, so similar to some of the siding we saw in some of those assessors photos. So just to give you that context as well, so to note that change too. But overall, the landmark or the principal structure at 928 Lafarge was constructed about 1890, making it approximately 131 years old. So it does meet the criteria for age. Staff finds that the style and integrity of the structure meet, or I'm sorry, I meant to, this should be, pardon me, for social significance. Staff does, if you looked at the report, I'm sorry about the note in the presentation here. So to clarify, staff does feel that it does not meet the architectural significance, but it does meet social and geographic. And so just to be clear, as we would look at it, the way our code reads, it has to meet one of the criteria. So it doesn't have to meet all three. And so just to clarify, sorry, I wasn't clear on my presentation slide here, but staff does not believe it meets architectural criteria because of that addition, but it does feel that there is some architecture that remains in the front, but it certainly meets social significance as well. So just to go back to what you see on your screen, even though there is that large addition in the rear, there is still the historic integrity remains on that front portion of the house, since the porch still looks as it did in those older photos. That window, some of the gable detailing is still there and has remained over time. And so that front portion retains that architectural significance, but overall, because the addition, some of that has been lost, if that makes sense. And of course, if any commissioners have questions, I'm happy to answer those too, but sorry about that. But for social significance, staff certainly finds that the former residents were noteworthy in the community, and the property does meet the criteria for social significance. And so there's a couple notes in terms of this, why staff believes that it meets the social significance. First and foremost, it was associated for many years for the Porto family, which you would recognize from 917 Lafarge as well. And so Antonio Porto and then Paul Boyce were both residents at one time or another of the property and were also coal miners. So it does keep with the ties, of course, of Louisville's coal mining heritage. And then there are also some sources that indicate Mother Cabrini, who first came to Denver in 1902, would visit Louisville. And when she did, she would stay at this house. So we do have some sources. How much of that is true or not over time, remains to be seen. But we do have some oral history and anecdotal data that would point to that she would stay here. So that would be noteworthy, certainly, as well. For the physical integrity, I covered some of this probably in my talk about the architectural side, but the house at 928 Lafarge Avenue has found its original location. And there are a number of other homes on the same block that are currently local landmarks. So it has that kind of general geographic significance as well. And then whether, as I mentioned in the architectural side, there've been a number of changes, and certainly the addition in the rear is one of them, but it does retain some of that physical integrity just by the look from the street, from the front portion staying the same, even though there is that rear addition on the back. So for those reasons, the structure sorry about that. I kept the same slide as before, my apologies. Not my night on slides, sorry about that. But the structure at 928 does still meet the criteria. And so staff does find that the property would be eligible for, to be landmarked and then therefore eligible for a $5,000 landmark grant. And so staff recommends this says resolution 12, but I believe it should be 13 if I remember correctly. But then staff would recommend that the house be named A.L. Porta. So that would be, we do have one house that's Porta already. So if we just did the Porta house, that might be a little confusing. So staff still finds that the Porta Association is important to identify. And so just for clarity in terms of overall naming, and then of course, if you were to approve it, having the plaque itself be A and L Porta to associate it more with those members. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I am here for any questions. I believe we have the applicant here. Yes, we have two. So we do have Joanna here as well. And then Josh, this would be here. Both of them could answer questions as from the applicant point of view as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions for staff?
Kim, can I see can you bring up the 48 assessors photo again?
Let me go back to that slide here, just a couple. This one, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. And then can you forward to the the today version?
Yep. So here's one photo.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. Let's see. I'm making you do all the work instead of me.
Yeah. And then here, just to jump forward, here's what it be. This was, a week ago.
Yeah.
So the actual,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
very
Okay.
current. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just kind of that gable window is really interesting. That narrow, that really long, narrow window is interesting. Okay. That I don't really have any questions. I just wanted to have you take a look
Sure.
at that.
And then just for everyone, I'll go back and just end on the photo so you can see that as well again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, no questions, just.
I do have one question for staff, maybe. The comment was that it had lost its architectural significance because of the large addition at the rear. But on the other hand, if we look at the Department of Interior approach to doing an addition to a historic structure, I think the structure at the back is clearly differentiated from the front. So would the overall, would we really have lost the architectural significance if it's sort of what would be approved by the Department of Interior anyway?
That's a good question.
Did
So
that come
yeah,
across
no,
to you?
that did make sense. I think, so what we'd be looking at too, right? If I would think about it more, as you kind of look at that, would be couching it in terms of historic integrity. So when you add the
Mhm.
addition to the back, there's certainly ways that you can do it that are more sensitive to the original portion of the structure,
Mhm.
and that's important. But an addition overall, or even other certain changes do affect the historic integrity. And so I think, certainly, there's a couple of things you could certainly, as the commission, feel that there still is architectural integrity. In addition, as I noted, our code would read that it wouldn't necessarily have to retain or meet the criteria for architectural significance in order to be landmarked. I know that's a little bit different than your question, but just to go back to that, I think that's more of what it is. There's certainly ways that additions can be more sensitive to structures, but it still would overall affect the integrity. And so that's just something that we keep in mind when we look at it, right? Another way to think about it would be with 301 Spruce, how we just looked at it. And we mentioned, hey, it still retains all 7 aspects of integrity. Those are sort of things that might have been modified here in this case, simply with the addition or other changes over time. And so that's just something to consider. So for instance, I don't believe that this property would meet all 7 aspects of integrity. It certainly meets some of them, but it wouldn't meet all of them. Does that kind of explanation help kind of craft? Yeah.
And it might not be too relevant to this because it would seem to me this would be a property that we would like to see landmarked. But if that statement that it had lost architectural integrity because of the large addition did become an issue sometime, it'd be good to understand the precedent there.
Yeah, that's a good question. And then, not to belabor it, but I think just as I thought of another point too in overall historic preservation, but then also in terms of the Secretary of the Interior standards, with the addition, not that the applicant does not propose this, but just to give as a hypothetical example, why the Secretary of the Interior standards does make a point to say it should be differentiated. If it's an addition, it should be set back and kind of, the connection shouldn't be right along the original property, is if it were to be removed in the future, it's not directly connected to the house. There's sensitive ways to do an addition. So if it were removed in the future, that could help restore some of the historic integrity because, the item that's not historic is no longer there, and to remove it doesn't, kind of foundationally affect the property itself, if that makes sense. And again, that's not what this applicant is proposing, but I wanted to bring that up because I think it's a good way to kind of keep in mind, how we think of historic integrity and how we think of additions and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to bring that up as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions for staff? All right. And then we'll have the applicant. Either of you would like to speak, just name and address for the record, please.
Hi, good evening. This is Joanna, and the address is 928 Lafarge.
And you don't have to say anything if you don't want to, but this is just
okay.
Your if you'd like to.
Maybe I'll say a little bit, maybe Josh wants to jump in also, because I think the idea would be the work is not finished on the house. The idea would be to further differentiate the large addition on the back from the original historic structure on the front. So I think the idea is to differentiate that with a different type of siding to make it really stand apart, that this is not part of the historic structure.
Okay.
Maybe Josh wants to say something, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Josh Johnston, DAJ Design, 922 Main Street. I would, just to further what Joanna said, she's already taken those steps in converting the siding on the historic part of the house, like you saw in the most recent photo from a week ago. So even without changing the siding on the 2-story part of the house, she's already made that distinction. Whereas some of those older photos that we took for that HSA process, the entire house was wrapped in the same siding, the same gable end. shingles, so there wasn't much of a distinction, but now that step has already been made, and I think Joanna's intent is to further that with altering the siding on the 2-story part of the house, but I don't think she really needs to do that.
Okay. All right. Any questions for the applicant? All right, we'll check with the public, see if there's any comments or questions. And I don't see any, so we'll bring it back for discussion with the commission. So this property is 50 years or older. It has social significance, and really, like, architecturally, the addition is really the only what's the right word? The only holdback from having it have strong architectural integrity. The actual front of the house is still pretty original as far as the shape and windows and doors and all that, even though the siding happened different times. Yeah, so open for discussion if anyone has any comments.
Yeah, I think I would agree with what Josh said, that the large addition at the back really, in my mind, is differentiated from the front, and a different kind of siding on the back is all for the good, but not essential.
Mm-hmm.
So it works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it definitely meets enough of the criteria that we needed to. And we have the homeowner telling us that in the future, you know, she's looking to make it even be more distinguishable which section is which. But I don't have a problem with it. And yeah, it is a large addition, but when you look at the front too, it's actually very well disguised from the front, and even that one side view. It's only when you really look at the back, you're like, wow, that is a big addition. So I'm fine. I'm fine with landmarking.
All right.
I think that's a really valuable block to our town too. That section of Lafarge is, well, it's coming out in that zoning report that it's a treasured part of town. So I'm glad to see this landmark.
Absolutely. Keith, did you have any comments on this one?
No, I agree with what you guys said, and I'm amazed that the front still looks very, very similar to what it did 100 years ago. So I agree. I think the back addition is disguised enough and separated enough that it's not going to detract.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Would someone like to make a motion for us?
Sure, I'll move to approve the landmark designation for 928 Lafarge, resolution 13 series 2021.
I'll second that.
And we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Keller,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. So thank you for bringing your property to us, and congratulations on being landmarked. And Kim will be in touch with all the next steps. And like I told our previous applicant, you'll be included in our landmarking ceremony where we present your plaque to you and everything. So
Thank you all so much.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too. All right. And our last item is a public hearing for a grant and alteration certificate request for 833 Jefferson Avenue. And we'll have a staff report.
Thank you, Chair Haley. And actually, if I may pause for a moment, I just have a quick question for Interim Director Ritchie. I believe that since this is Commissioner Keller's property, he should leave now, even at the beginning of the presentation for the whole item, I believe. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if there's any staff updates, Commissioner Keller, then Kim can send you an email if you'd like to rejoin the meeting afterward. But yes, that's correct.
I totally agree. I will do that.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If your wife, though, I think, do you have a representative within your household that's going to represent?
No, she's not available right now. So go ahead, and if you guys need any more clarification, I can certainly provide that.
Yeah, we'll see if that comes up for the benefit of the commission. We may, depending on what that is, we'll let you know. But yeah, definitely go ahead and just log off the meeting, and then we'll give you a shout when we need you to hop back on. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Ritchie. Great. I just want to make sure I did that correctly. And then I do have his number, so I can make sure that he comes back on after we're done here. So now I'll go ahead and share my screen to begin. So this is two requests. So this is a request to approve an alteration certificate, and grant request for the property at 833 Jefferson Avenue. As we've talked about before, just to clarify, so this is a landmarked property. You did landmark it, I believe, in 2020. It has received a previous grant request, which we'll get into more detail, but just because there's a grant request and some work being proposed on a landmark property that is on the exterior, we would also have the alteration certificate as well. So I'm happy to clarify and answer any other questions on that, but I'll kind of get going on the presentation itself. So as just context of the location, you can see here it's outlined in white. They're on Jefferson Avenue, just north of Spruce Street and south of Walnut Street. And then the general location within Old Town is indicated by the star on the map on the right-hand side of your screen. For some historic conditions, there's kind of two things that we look at, right? So on the left-hand side is a 1948 assessor's photo from a previous assessor's card. And then the right-hand photo would be a photo from 2020, just giving you further context of what it looked like prior to landmarking and the grant work and the loan that has been approved for this property previously. Here is what it looks like current. So these are recent photos after some of the work that's been done. So on the left-hand side, you can see the east view there, the front elevation, and then the right-hand photo is the southeast view to give you a little bit of edge near the chimney, but then also the front view as well. So the first, we'll break it up into two, and then you'll vote on both of the requests at the end. But to review the grant first, this will be Resolution 14, Series 2021 for the grant request. And a little bit of background that there was a previous grant approved in the amount of $17,433 previously. So out of the $40,000 maximum eligible for matching funds, there's $22,567 remaining for a potential grant for this property, and that is the amount this applicant is requesting at this time. So as a reminder, some of the things that are eligible for grant funds would be things like would be the things listed here before you: siding repair, you could see foundation, crawl space work, floor structure work, window replacement. Those sorts of things are typically what are eligible to even be requested for a preservation and restoration grant. And what we'd be looking at for this property is what you see before you here in particular. So some of the work would fall under the eligible categories, but you can see here there's requests for foundation or crawl space work for the amount of $9,000. And these amounts in the table would be before matching. So it's the full amount, but just to clarify. So they would be looking to repair or replace the foundation for site grading and draining rehabilitation work. That would include new drains and spouts and some of the, what it sounds like the site grading work, just to make sure that the water would flow better to help preserve the structure. And then the floor structure work that's proposed would be kind of subfloor work. So kind of right there near the foundation, underneath the flooring itself, I should say. So replacing or repairing the joists, and then related plumbing, electrical, and code required work sensitive to the floor structure replacement. And so as a further clarification there as well, typically, as you know, we wouldn't, we typically wouldn't just allow for electrical work to be approved as part of a matching grant or be eligible to request for funds. But in cases like this, our code does allow for some of that work that's sensitive to be approved as part of a grant request if it's directly related to other eligible work items. So in this case, a lot of those items, the electrical and plumbing, had to be moved to help preserve or do the rehabilitation work on the subfloor. So staff did feel that would fall under that sort of caveat to be able to be grant funded. So we can talk about that more as well, but just to clarify there. And then the other item we'd be looking at, of course, is the alteration certificate for the work itself, since again, this is a landmarked property. So that would be Resolution 15, Series 2021. And so the applicant is applying for an alteration certificate to allow for preservation and rehabilitation work to the subject property. And a historic structure assessment was done in 2015 and did specifically mention some of the repairs you see here before you tonight, which would be the foundation work where necessary, reinforce the floor system, and site regrading were all mentioned specifically in the historic structure assessment. And this is just an example criteria. We look at more than what's just on your screen. The full list that we would look at is in the staff report in your packet. But just to give you an example of some of the things that staff would look at for an alteration certificate request would be, for instance, here you can see number 2, the architectural style, arrangement, texture, and material used on the existing and proposed structures and their relation and compatibility with other structures. And so in this case, the set of proposed work focuses on the foundation and other underground or drainage and grading work recommended by the HSA and wouldn't have a negative impact on the architectural style or material. So staff did find that either the work proposed tonight was not applicable to the criteria or didn't negatively affect the criteria. So either way, it did meet those criteria, and we can get into those further if you wish as well. But overall, staff does find that the proposed scope of the work would not result in any loss of the historic character of the subject property, and it does not affect in any historic loss of the historic character of the subject property, and it does still meet the criteria, and the work does not affect any of the proposed design integrity as well. And so staff recommends approval of, got it wrong again, it's Resolution 15. It is not my night for the presentation. I'm so sorry, Commissioners. Series 2021 recommending approval of the alteration certificate for 833 Jefferson Avenue. So as one last, I think I don't have, and then, right, good, I did have it here. So then we also have staff does recommend approval of Resolution 14, Series 2021, which would be for the grant in the amount of $22,567 in matching funds. And so I will stop sharing my screen, and I am here for any questions, as we know that the applicant is one of our commissioners, so he has recused himself and set aside, but we could always get particular questions if needed for him and follow up that way.
Okay. Any questions for staff?
For the record, I think that where you were apologizing for the resolution numbers, when they go to the city council, they're not really the numbers that we assign anyway, are they?
That's true. The number of city council reviews are different resolutions. I appreciate the support there. Yes, but for us, they are our numbers, so they are specific to ours. But yes, thank you.
Okay.
So no questions for Kim?
No.
And then I'll see if there's any public comments. I doubt there are, judging on how it's gone this evening. All right, no public comments. So bring it back for discussion since the applicant's not here.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
Well, I think this is a really great example of how a 2015 HSA is playing in our favor, right? Because there's not really any question like, well, do you really need this? Do you really need your floors? Are you really, what's happening? What happened to your house in the last 7 years that would cause you to need grading and blah, blah, blah? I mean, we know in the HSA that this is work that they called out in the HSA that needed to be done. And they're getting to it now, which is totally reasonable. So that's awesome. That makes my comfort level like rock solid, right? Like I have no doubt that this is exactly the work, and it's not biased toward the owner and the owner saying, oh, I need this. I think I need this. You're right. Like we know that we spent the money on this and this is what we were told was going to need to happen to this property at some point. So I have no problem with that, and that the amounts seem very reasonable to me. Nothing seemed out of line there. So 50,000 for the work they're doing. And I also, I appreciate Kim mentioning the whole electrical is not usually a part of it. But of course it has to be if you have, electrical lines intermixed with your joist, or even, God forbid, they cut a hole through a joist and ran the electrical. So of course that should be included in the cost to rehab or preserve the basic structure of the house. So
Right.
that's kind of where I stand on it.
Good point. Thanks for pointing that out, because it does make it clear. It's also sort of a good example of sort of a sequential incursion of costs. There were some initial costs. There was a loan. Now there's further work being done, and it all is applicable to the grant. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and I think the work is reasonable. Obviously it's matching, so it's well within the grant limit as far as what we can give. So that's great. All the work is reasonable. I think as far as the alteration certificate, like it doesn't affect any of the architectural integrity. It's not, nothing that's being seen from outside anyway. So
Right.
Anything that's being done is just to make it last that much longer. So it's just shoring it up and making sure that it's, drained properly, the floor is solid, all those kind of things. And I agree, Andrew. I think this is exactly what our HSA is for, is prioritizing what needs to be done and helping us have a better understanding of the condition of the home, so that when things come up that are expensive, we know and can vote in confidence that it's reasonable. So yeah, I think this is pretty straightforward.
I would agree.
Yeah. Would either of you like to make a motion?
I would move that we approve the grant request, whatever the number, for 833 Jefferson.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. So that was the alteration certificate, and then next we just need the grant.
Yeah, I think we did the grant. So
Okay.
yes, I will make a motion to approve the alteration certificate for 833 Jefferson Avenue. I think it was number 15, series 2021.
Perfect. And we'll do another roll call, please.
I'll second it.
Oh,
We have such a small group. We're like,
I know.
you approved, you second.
So Gary seconded it. So now we will do a roll call.
Commissioner Dunlap,
Yes.
Commissioner Clemmy,
Yes.
Chair Haley.
Yes. All right. It's amazing to see how amazing his house looks compared to the original. I forgot like what the original looked like. So, or not the original, but the before he did the work on it. So
Yeah.
really fun to see progress. So I think our last item, and Kim, are you able to contact Keith to see if he wants to come back?
I did just text him that you all voted and that he can come back. So I did let him know.
Great. Obviously, he's not going to miss a lot from here on out, but if he wants to come back. So those are all of our public hearings. I feel like those were very positive. It's like such a good way to end the year.
Yeah.
Like, landmarks, so good.
2 landmarks, some grant requests, a flip from a possible demo to a HSA request for probable cause determination. Yeah, that was a rock star night.
I know. Good way to go out, Andrea.
Yeah, it's exciting.
All right, so our last item is items from staff. Our next item, not last.
Thank you so much, Chair Haley. I'm just going to pull up. I do have a couple slides before you. So we'll look at our subcommittee updates, and then I do have the just the project table update as well for you as all part of the staff updates this evening. Hopefully those, I didn't mess up those presentation panels, but we'll give it a go here. So what you see before you is alteration certificate updates. So between tonight and the last meeting we had, we did review 1013 Jefferson. So that would be a subcommittee request for replacing the porch stairs and adding a railing to them. So this would be just a few blocks north from Keith's house on the same side of the street, actually on that kind of west side of Jefferson. And so they had concrete steps that were they just wanted to replace, and then also add a railing just for safety and to meet code. So the stairs will be replaced in a similar shape and material, and then the additional handrails proposed wouldn't have a negative effect on the historic integrity. And again, kind of back to our previous conversation, it's something that could be removed without affecting negatively the property. And so the subcommittee did release it there at the subcommittee level. And then on the right-hand side, just since it is the end of the year, I thought it might be nice for everyone to just sort of see what we looked at in 2021. So on the right-hand side, I tally how many days we look at each subcommittee request. And so I average those out. So we're averaging for alteration certificate reviews about 4.75 days. So within basically a week, which I think is pretty good. And then you can see those 6 requests for addresses are on the right-hand side of the screen, bullet pointed. And as we all know, but just in case, if folks watch this meeting later, alteration certificates are only reviewed for landmark properties. So all those are landmark properties, and they would start at the subcommittee level and then potentially be moved up if needed to be reviewed with the full commission. And for demolition reviews, which is the next slide here, I did the same thing in terms of time. So I'll do that since it's on the left-hand side of the screen first. And we didn't have any demolition reviews other than 612 Jefferson, which was a subcommittee and then bumped up this evening. So I didn't indicate its status on this slide necessarily, but I did give some information overall. So we are averaging about 5.5 days for our demolition reviews in the subcommittee. And then you can see those, I didn't count it, but I think we have about like 12 or something on the left-hand side that we've reviewed. And so again, just for clarity and for some folks that might just watch this at a later date, we would look at demolition subcommittees. They would either be for demolitions, or if there's kind of removal of items that are on a street facing facade that for properties that aren't landmarked but are older than 1955 is typically what we would look at for those. So just as a general clarification, you can see 612 Jefferson's on the list there, as well as some others. So, and then to move on from those, I do have the historic preservation update table. We can kind of talk about it in any sort of way that you'd like, but essentially to give you some context of me and kind of how I put it together. These on the left-hand side are all project items. So certain projects, you can see the Old Town overlay update, the coloring book, HSA updates. These were all things that we looked at throughout the year in general, number one, but also number two, things that were listed sort of as projects that the commission wanted to look at this year. When you met, I believe it was January meeting or then February meeting, we talked about a number of these. And so all of these on the screen would be everything on that list, except there were a few I didn't include on here, which surround sort of grants. There were a couple grant items. I'm just pulling it up here so I have it in front of me. So for instance, what's not on the table before you this evening, but we did talk about as things we might want to think about working on or making a project would be, consider requiring cost estimates for grants, residential grant amounts, and if we want to change those were things we pinpointed as things we wanted to talk about. And so we don't have any updates on them. We didn't necessarily get to them this year. So it's something to just keep in mind. I think if we want to put those as part of our 2022 work plan, as we talk about that at the beginning of the year. The other thing you would not see necessarily listed on this project item list on the table would be conservation easements. There was some, one of the things we kind of pinpointed would be to consider adding additional section to funding resolution for residential conservation easements. But we did, I think in part, we could think about that for 2022 as well. But something to also keep in mind would be that the Old Town overlay, some of that language and some of that code language about conservation easements is inherently within the Old Town overlay. And so while we don't know what the consultants will eventually recommend for changes, we know that we have the consultants looking at the Old Town overlay in general as part of that project. So it could be sort of like inherently worked into that general project, depending on what the consultant team recommends and depending on what eventually, changes are adopted. But just something to keep in mind that some of that work might already be technically being done, even if it's not necessarily us at the commission sitting down and talking about it. But the other things I'll just go through quickly. I already kind of talked about the Old Town overlay, but something to definitely point out is that the diagnostic report is going to City Council tomorrow night. So this is a consultant team doing a presentation of their diagnostic report. It will be similar to the one we saw when we had the joint meeting with the Planning Commission group here with us in October. But it's updated a little bit. There's been some refinement just in general in terms of having those meetings and making some changes. So generally it's the same, it's still the diagnostic report, but if you're interested in viewing that or hearing the updates or just refreshing, you could see them present that tomorrow at City Council. The coloring book update, we did, as you know, we had the subcommittee and then we selected 15 of our landmark buildings to be a part of that coloring book. And I'm very excited that we had the artists come out last Thursday, I believe it was, and we were able to tour Old Town and walk to all of the buildings that are on. We didn't go to the grain elevator. That one was a little bit further and she had already drawn that one. So we skipped that one, but the rest we walked to, and she was able to take photos and really see them in person. And so she's moving on to her next one that has started drawing would be 801 grant, 701 grant, and 721 grant. So she already has the grain elevator and then she's working on those next. So just sort of updating the coloring book, that's where that's at. For the HSA updates, we talked about that for a number of meetings sort of in the spring and into summer, but just as a general kind of endpoint and update of where we landed on that would be that staff took comments from the commission, made some changes, made some clarifying changes to both the website and the HSA packet that we give out to residents or interested folks. And then also I've started asking for basically more itemized receipts or invoices in return when we have people who've paid their HSA and now are asking for the reimbursement. And so that just to give us more clarification so we can start just seeing what the breakdown potentially is between structural engineers or architects or that sort of thing. For the historic survey project, which is next on the table, they were 52 was this phase of that project. So there was 48 and then 52. And then Bridget Bacon of the museum reviewed for the history, and then staff did finish the review for the architectural side of all those inventory forms. And so all those draft forms have been reviewed and then sent back to the consultant. So they have that and they're working through our comments and making those appropriate changes. And then as they work through that, I'll make sure to update our group here. So when those are finalized, we can have the consultant team come and do the presentation and we can have the final reports as well. So I don't have an estimated timeline of their return from our edits, but they do have all of our edits on their side now. And then for other public outreach efforts, that last line of the table, just some things to think about it, I think would be, we did send out the grant amount reminder as in the form of a postcard to all residents of Old Town earlier this year. And then we did hold those 3 plaque ceremonies, which were very fun. And so we'll certainly kind of, hopefully, depending, of course, how things go with the variants, but hopefully go back to our normal schedule and host something in May, just as we typically do for Preservation Month. And then certainly we can look at other outreach efforts for 2022, but just as the ones that we've noted. So I'm happy to kind of talk through any more. I don't want to belabor it too much, but I certainly want to just give the update of the table and the projects and where they're at and their status. So I'm here for any questions, or if you just want to discuss it, but we can always talk about 2022 goals early next year.
Kim, that historic survey project, now that was a set of new structures to be looked at by Paleo West. Is that what that was?
New structures in relation to, like, they are ones that have not been inventoried before. That's correct.
I see. Okay. Will they be updating that? As I think there were 3 survey documents, right? One for residential, one for commercial, and one for general
Industrial.
Manufacturing sort of thing.
Yeah. So that's a good question. So directly, no, they wouldn't affect those reports, but there would be a narrative report that is a part of this general report as well. So they had their list of the 48 and 52, so the 100 properties, and they're associated with that. There will be a general context report as a part of that. So to say, here's what we learned from these properties in general. Here's what it told us about Louisville and its history in general. So those sorts of things will be a part of that report. So it won't necessarily edit the ones existing, but it'll be a similar report that's like that, that's new based on these ones they looked at this time.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Also, just to comment, in case you use these slides or this information for other presentations, when you, a few slides back, talked about the demolitions requests and the time it took to do them, there was a pretty big list of on that associated with the demolitions, including 801 Main is an example. I mean, was there a demolition request for that?
You know what? I think I'd have to go back and do 801 Main, I believe was, let me just try to get my bearings here.
Yeah, that's the Steinbach Hardware Mercantile.
That'd be 809 Main. So that was a part, that kind of ATM review was the alteration certificate. Let me double check. Let me pull up.
Maybe these two are reversed.
That could be it.
Alteration versus demolition.
Let me look. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head, but I do have my Excel sheet, and I can take a quick look.
Well, it isn't anything you have to do right now. It's just that you might want to look at those in case those were used in a presentation to city council or something.
Thank you.
And Kim, one thing I was going to ask, just as far as kind of housekeeping, is do you feel like that 4.75 and 5.5 is reasonable, or do you need us to do better? Like, what, I know that's been kind of a discussion in the past, is making sure that we as commission members, like, try to be prompt. I don't know if I just wanted to kind of see what your feeling is on the timeline.
Yeah, I think my take would be, I think we're doing good. There's certainly ones where, and that skewed the 5.5 one, where I think it was, I can't remember what, but sometimes it takes a little bit because we go back and forth with the applicant and ask for more information. I think that's reasonable. Overall, I think a 5-day, 1 week business turnaround is good. That would be my general take. I can also give the information that I haven't really had folks come back and say, hey, that took too long, or kind of sort of, make complaints about it. I haven't heard that in my time here either. And I think that 5 days would be good. And I appreciate the promptness that you guys all have. I think it's important to think about them critically and not just answer as quickly as possible, even if that's maybe what the applicant might want, right? It's important to really think them through, but some are easier and some aren't. 809 Main is a good example. We had a subcommittee request for the door change, right, even after it had been landmarked. And that one we went back and forth for a while with getting more information or getting clarification. I think that's important. So overall, I think we're doing well with the 5 days, and I haven't heard much pushback. And I will say thank you too, because in instances where we catch them on we drive by and we realize they're doing work and they hadn't gotten they needed a subcommittee review of some variety and they haven't gotten it. I typically try to note that in my emails, and I've had great response. I typically say, hey, could you guys come a little bit quicker or respond right away? And that's always happened. So I just appreciate you all very much.
That's good. And I guess too, when that does go back and forth, usually the applicant is involved, so they at least know that we're working on it. So
exactly. And I'll voice that. I'll say, and I typically, I give the expectation. I say, that's what I've been telling folks, is it typically is within a week is when we've been hearing back. And then I'll say that too, that I'll give it, the more information you can give me, the better. So I can give that to the commission right away is typically how I let them know. And then I'll also say, sometimes they ask for more, so you might need to follow up. So, I can always make sure I'm doing that, but I do try to kind of set it up that this isn't always just a quick review. This isn't always like a one-day thing. Sometimes there's questions. So.
Okay. That's good. Yeah, and thank you for the organized chart. That's really helpful too. It looks good and it's easy to kind of see where we are and
of course
easily. So
Yeah, no, that table, that was outstanding. And it really shows us as well as the public how hard you work and all the balls that you're juggling. And that's important because there's a lot to your job and there's a lot to this, commission and this, I don't know what you'd call, but sales tax thing that, the citizens wanted. And it really, to have it documented that way just really shows that, it is a program that's working and people work hard at it and it takes a village and right. And so that table is excellent. And I'm super excited about the coloring book, but that's.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I have a lot of help from you and my fellow colleagues, so I'm just very lucky.
Yeah, good.
all right. Anything else from you, Kim?
Not as far as staff updates. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Any updates from commissioners? We have Andrea's last meeting, so that's an update.
That is an update.
Yeah, so we're definitely going to be missing you.
Well, it has been a pleasure. It's been a learning experience. I hope see you guys around and maybe someday I'll get back on.
Yeah, and definitely you are still invited to the landmarking ceremony.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll get you a coloring book, one of the first print.
Yeah, I want to be first on the list for a coloring book.
Yeah. I just really appreciate your straightforwardness and you're very you have good critical thinking where you just make sure that everything is explored very thoroughly, and I just really appreciate that. So I'm really sad to lose you, but totally understand.
Yeah.
No guilt or sadness on your side, but just know that you've been a huge asset to our commission. So
thank you. Yeah, if you're not raising young kids, you're taking care of old people, right?
Right.
You have this very small window where you have this, you're not doing one or the other for some people, because that's why Hannah Parrish had to go, right? Because she, she had her young one at home, and that takes a lot too. So
that's right. Well, there's definitely some people that do both. It's that sandwich generation.
No, wow.
Old enough, having kids and then young. So
yeah, it's a lot.
But yeah, well, I hope everything goes well for you, and just thank you so much for your time with us. So
yeah, thanks, Andrea, for your contributions.
Yeah,
keep up the good work. Keep it up.
Thank you. And Keith, congratulations on your grant and your alteration certificate.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are the best.
So
System worked out what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
All right.
I think that's everything. So our last item is just to adjourn. So
I think Andrea needs to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, I make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
All right, good night.
All right,
I
Merry
just want to say
Christmas,
thank you to
everybody.
Andrea as well. And I just want to take one more note to say, thank you all. This was my first year with the city and it's just been a joy to serve this commission. And I hope you all have a wonderful new year and just thank you so much.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're very appreciative of you, Kim. So thank you for all you've done and just coming in and being, yeah, you've just taken on a lot and you've done a great job. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank
Good
you.
work.
Happy New Year, everyone. Thank you.
Yep, happy holidays.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.